This is the second part of the video for the numeracy package. We saw that you'd have to do a section where you have to calculate using significant digit rules or significant figures. Um, so make sure you go through that and take a look at the answer key provided by your teacher. If you continue scrolling down, you'll see there's a section where you need to define some terms, and you can get these terms from your notes and from videos that are posted in your notes as well. And then we get down to scientific graphing, which is very important. You'll learn where the different variables go and what the characteristics of a good graph look like. So you'll have to have a title, use a ruler, which is super important. Remember that the x-axis is always the independent variable, and the y-axis is always the dependent variable. And you have a list of steps here that guide you through how to make an appropriate graph. The biggest tip I can give you is to always remember to have that title and to always label your axes. So label the x-axis for the title, label the y-axis of the title. Make sure you have the units. So if you have, let's say, time, make sure you put seconds in brackets. And then make sure you make a line of best fit. So don't connect the dots, but rather make a line that's as close to all the dots as possible and has roughly even amounts on both sides or equal amounts on both sides. So it's called a line of best fit. It gives you a trend. Um, sometimes you might have to make bar graphs, and your teacher may teach you when to use a bar graph and when to use a line graph. It might be something you should also research as well. Continue going down, and there's a little bit of a lesson on how to calculate slope, which you'll learn in math this semester or next semester if you don't have math this semester. So if you continue going down, there's some examples of doing slope. So you should actually practice these out. So I'll do one example with you just to make sure you have a general idea of what to do. So the first question is what is the independent variable, and our independent variable in this case is time because it's the one on the x-axis. So time is our independent variable. And on the y-axis, we'd have our dependent variable, so the position. So basically keeping track of someone's position over time. They're moving, and we're seeing what distance they're moving over time. And then we ask you a question about how to identify how to analyze a graph. So where is the object at 4 seconds? So we're asking you at 4 seconds, find that in the x-axis. Here's 4 seconds. At what position is the object? So you go up until you find your line here. And we see that it's at 40 meters. And make sure you put that unit. You can't just say 40. You have to put the unit in there, 40 meters. Then you're asked to find the slope of the graph. And so to find the slope of the graph, you need to choose 2 points in the graph. It doesn't really matter which ones. So I'll choose the 2 that I've circled here. Write their coordinates down. So you always write the x coordinate first, so 10. And then the y coordinate here is 100. So let's write that down. And then we'll do the same thing over here. So the x coordinate is 4 and the y coordinate is 40. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the slope formula, which is m. The m stands for slope, is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so students have a hard time determining what their x and y's are. So let's write x over here, y over here, x over here, y over here. Now, 0 is kind of where you start off, and then you continue moving towards the right. So anything more towards the right is going to be considered your y2 or x2. So let's look at our 2 points. This is our x2, y2, because it's to the right of the x1, y1. So we can put our numbers in there. Y2 is 100. Y1 is 40. And the 100 and the 40, if we put their units, I'm just going to put these in brackets here, put the units on the outside. Those represent meters. So we have meters over here. Divided by our x2, which is 10, minus our x1, which is 4. And that represents seconds of time there. So in the end, we get something like this. We get 60 over 6 meters second. And if you do the division, 60 divided by 6, that's 10. And the units don't cancel out because they're different units, meters per second. So what you notice here is that your slope is actually your speed, or some of you may call it velocity. There actually is a difference. We don't really cover that in grade 9. but speed or velocity would be appropriate as well. And so you do that for the next series of points and questions below. Practice it and take a look at the answer key that your teacher provides to you. So we'll continue moving down to take a look at what other types of problems you'll have to solve. There's videos for these problems, and if you don't like the videos that are made for you, again, take a look online. There's plenty there for you. So similar types of problems for you to solve, work together, compare answers to make sure you're all on the right track. Then you get to solving for variables. That'll be very important because we're going to be doing calculations where you have to solve for unknown things in science. So you'll have to solve for a variable, something unknown, something you don't know. So for example, here we have x minus 8 is equal to 12, and you need to find what x is. And some of you can already do this in your head. You can say, well, if it's equal to 12, then x has to be 20, because 20 minus 8 is 12. But there's also a strategy that you need to show. You have to show your work. So typically what you do when you want to solve for a variable is you do the opposite of what's being done to that variable. So here 8's being taken away from x. So what you're going to do is you're going to add 8 to that. You're going to do 8 minus x plus 8 to take away the 8. You want to get the x alone. But if you do it to one side of the equation, you have to do it to the other side because it gets jealous. You need to respect that equality. So 12 plus 8. And so when you do 8 minus 8 or minus 8 plus 8, that cancels out. You get x, because it equals 0, that's why it cancels out, is equal to 12 plus 8, which is 20. And so you'll learn a variety of different strategies to isolate for variables in the video for solving, and you can use those strategies in order to solve for the rest of the variables. And you'll have a page of solving here. You'll also have some more questions where you have to solve and just kind of briefly analyze how to solve for the equations. And then you'll have another page finally here where you're solving for different variables for a particular equation. So if you go through the video for solving, these will be made a little bit easier for you to do. And these skills will be extremely important, especially when we get to density and when we get to the electricity unit where there's a variety of calculations where you'll have to solve for different variables.